Well, what's up, Doc? Well, for one thing, they're now showing classic Bugs Bunny cartoons on Turner Classic Movies. For why that's the best news ever, meet my special guest next on Brio TV, the podcast. Well, hi there. Thank you for joining me. I'm your host, Bill Brio. Some of you know I collect 16mm films. Many are classic Warner Brothers cartoons made in the early to mid last century. Well, I first saw these 7-minute miracles on TV on the Bugs Bunny Roadrunner Hour. I'll always be grateful to Reg Hart in Toronto for projecting them on film way back before there was videotape or DVD or any other way to see them or stream them. When I wanted to read more about them, there were two guys who had the scoop, Leonard Maltin and Gertie Beck. These two lifelong friends have been telling the story of Termite Terrace and other animation legends ever since. Beck's wonderful website, cartoonresearch.com, is the place to get information on everything from Gertie the Dinosaur to the Flintstones and beyond. He's written 15 books on animation and has another one coming, and also share some exciting news about a long-awaited book that finally has a release date. Please welcome Mr. Gertie Beck. My pleasure to be speaking with Gertie Beck, someone I've admired for many years, have a few of his books. He is the animation historian of record. I've owned my copy of 50 Greatest Cartoons probably since it came out. My goodness, Gertie, was it 1995? Back in the
94, actually.
There you are. Wow.
Yeah.
So, and all your other people can see you on the front of, you've got videos of cartoons from Fleischer to Disney to Warner's, for certainly. But beyond that, beyond being a historian and author, you're a busy lecturer and you're just a busy guy. And you have a great website and everything else. So lots of places where people can catch up and enjoy your great work. So thank you for all you've done for the world of animation.
Welcome. You're welcome. At the moment, without going on and on, I mean, I teach at CalArts, the history of animation. Wow. I'm writing these little interstitials for the Me TV Tunes channel, and I also was involved with that channel in the formation of it and consulting to it, and physical media, Warner Brothers, Warner Archive. I'm still involved. We're still putting out things. We have a work Universal. We've been doing Woody Woodpecker Blu-rays. People still collect Blu-rays. They're coming back. No, it's doing the Blu-rays are important because that's where the restoration work is done. And once the restoration work is done, they now have a library of 750 Looney Tunes to sell to TCM and Tubi and all these other places.
Right.
But you'd think the company would just restore those things on their own with hopes of selling them off. But no. So we at the in the area of the home video, we've been the forefront of preserving the cartoons, and I've been working on that.
Thank goodness, it's so important. And you as well, I believe. I've been a 16mm film collector for years and years and years. So going all the way back to that. So we all know all about Vinegar Syndrome and everything red and all the rest of it. And I have a lot of these classic cartoons on film, and that's where I first discovered them. There's a guy in Toronto named Reg Hart, and he used to show Reg. So when I was in high school, I would go down and take the subway downtown and see all of these incredible Betty Boop and Fleischer and Terry Tunes and everything else that you could not see anywhere else. At this point, they weren't really on TV. There were no VHS tapes. There was no digital this or that. Where did you discover these on television? You'd be too young to have seen them in the theater, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm old enough that I was born in 1955, so you can guys calculate the age, which was actually great because I was 5 when the Flintstones went on, and 4 and 5 when the Rocky and Bullwinkle, Beanie and Cecil, all that stuff was just brand new. And of course, the older classics were shown on TV. And I just watched TV as a kid. I just, it's happening. It's real. I never really reacted. I didn't laugh at cartoon antics until I was like in my teenage years, 13, 14, 15, and I was doing my homework, coming home from school. I'd put Bugs Bunny on in the background, and I'd begin to notice they were really well drawn. How do you animate? How do you make a drawing move? And they were really funny, and I was laughing my ass off in my teen years.
Yeah.
And then I realized these aren't really for kids. You know, these things I grew up with are for everybody. And then as I researched things further, I found out that animation really wasn't for kids at all until TV came around in the mid 50s and 60s with kiddie show hosts, and animation was relegated to Saturday mornings and for kids. Again, so much so is it forgotten that they weren't aimed at kids, that when the Flintstones went on as primetime series, that was considered a unique thing. It was like, wow, a cartoon for grown-ups? I mean, that was... By the way, if you look at the Flintstones today, it doesn't look like a cartoon for grown-ups. But if you listen to and watch the first 2 seasons before Pebbles, nothing against Pebbles, but before Pebbles, it's really, really written toward an adult audience, and it's pretty funny for what it was.
It's more along the lines of the Honeymooners at that point, right?
Clearly it was... a tribute or whatever word I can think of to, they love the Honeymooners. So they took that as their model, their template, to put, what if the Honeymooners, there's the elevator pitch, the Honeymooners in the Stone Age, and that's what did it, I guess.
Well, all the Warner's animators in the 30s were really borrowing from Chaplin and Keaton and the Marx Brothers, and it's only natural. And I brought Beanie out, by the way. I hope you can notice.
I see that.
Dusted him off. The Bob Clampett, certainly we'll get into this with the Warner talk, but for me, he's the mad genius of a lot of this stuff.
I'm so happy to hear people say that. In fact, I'm looking. I really don't have things that I can grab real quickly, but let me see. I do have something I can plug that I want you, because you've mentioned it. But I've been working with Ruth Clampett, his daughter.
Oh, great!
Clampett is my favorite director. I love Chuck Jones. I love Tex Avery. I love Friz Freleng.
Yes,
I love a lot of these guys. I love a lot of the directors at Disney and Hanna-Barbera and all that. I do. Yeah. But Clampett is the guy.
Yes.
He's, as I've often said, he put the Looney in Looney Tunes.
He did.
And Ruth has been working for years on a book about her father. And it is about to come out. It's going to come out this year. Absolutely. I've already seen the layouts. It's being printed. But it's called Welcome to Wacky Land. I'll do a plug here.
Fantastic.
By Ruth Clampett. You've got a scoop.
Yeah.
And this book is coming. That's the cover. And it will be coming out. It won't be this size. It'll be a big coffee table book. But
are you contributing to it? Are you
only in that I've been giving my 2 cents about what should be and shouldn't be in there, and reading it, the manuscript, agreeing mainly with the images that have been pulled for it. But I haven't written anything for it. But I've been a great supporter. Do it. And I have to say, it's been years. You just happen to be asking in the year it's actually going to come out. It's literally been decades that this book has been in the morning. So, people look out for that. Clampett, of course, his cartoons are so great, and I'm so happy that I mean, I hate to be, I don't want to be an egotistical guy about any of this, but I was involved with restoring his films, putting the original titles back on
Oh,
to a lot of the cartoons where they were cut off, so we can have his name, his credit on book review and Baby Bottleneck and some others that we've had to, put his credit back on it,
have you been involved? I know some of the early Time for Beanie puppet films have recently surfaced. I had never seen them before.
Yeah. I know all about that.
Yeah.
I am involved with that. What happened is this, and why you're suddenly something's happening with them is this. And I'm going to make this a short story because it's almost a feature length Mission Impossible story. But Clampett, for decades, when people like me I knew him. I knew Bob Clampett. I mean, in the '70s before he passed away. I will say I became friends with him. It's hard for me to say that, but
Wow.
it's true. It's only true because I'm still friendly with the family. They knew, they knew that I was, that Bob loved talking to me about, because I mainly wanted to ask him about his cartoons and why did he do this? Why did he do that?
Yeah.
And he said from those days that he had saved all the Time for Beanie shows, their kinescopes, and they were shot off the TV because these were live.
Yeah.
And they were shot off on film. But for some reason, except for one or two episodes as a sample, he never really put them out or wanted them to be even seen. Because even though they're kind of classic, they won Emmys, he felt that they weren't up to the level of television and the Muppets and things that were happening in the decades since. It was very primitive early TV. Wow. But it's Stan Freberg, Dawes Butler. It's right. Early. It is early TV. There's other aspects to its historical value, and he never did anything with it. And I had brought friends of mine who did film restoration or even just scanning. Over the years, I kind of begged them, let us at least digitize them so that they don't deteriorate or something happens. And unfortunately, nothing really happened. Their stuff was buried in a vault. Nobody knew where. Nobody knew anything. And then, long story short, the vault that they were in Hollywood was closing. The building was sold, and a big notice went out 8 months in advance. Get your stuff out of my vault because we're closing this building. It's going to be another thing. We're done. And the Clampetts had their stuff in this building, as did many, many other film people. It was a film archive with refrigerated storages and all that.
Wow.
And I had friends who had their film collections in these vaults that were there, and my friends who had the vaults that were there, what happened is when it got to be like within a month or so of them closing. This is a great story.
Yes.
Within a month of them closing, they opened up everybody's vaults, meaning they said, "Look, you got to get your stuff out, or we'll be trashing it.
Wow.
We'll throw it all in a big dumpster." This was hundreds of clients, hundreds of people. So my friends got their stuff out, but everybody's doors were open. They could see and when several of my friends went in to this one vault, and they saw nothing but film canisters, and they were wafting of vinegar.
Right.
And they would pull one down and said, "Time for Beanie." Oh. The Time for Beanie vault, the fabled Time for Beanie vault. And nobody was doing anything about it. I communicated with the Clampetts, my friend. I said, your stuff is there. Are you going to take it? And the decision was made that no. We took a few. They are far gone. They are vinegar. You can't run them. You can't do anything with them. And to them, they had no commercial value. They really don't. Yeah. All right. So they just said, we're just going to let the place destroy it. It's like leaving your stuff there is like throwing it into a dumpster.
Right.
Well, I went in, was helping my friends pull their collections out, and the notices as the days and weeks, as the days counted down, I forgot what month it was, about a year ago. The notices were getting on all the walls. We're closing in 2 weeks. If your stuff is still here next week, consider it not yours. It is, we're going to throw it out. We're going to take it. We're going to do something. I did the copyright searches. They never, those things were public domain.
Wow.
They were not. How do you even scan or transfer something that's curling? It's not only vinegar, it's curling. How do you get it through the projector? And I ended up talking to some film people, and they said there's very high-end, expensive equipment, and we can scan it frame by frame.
Yeah.
And the soundtracks are on there too. And a lot of trouble, a lot of problems with these things.
And Jerry, were these 35 or a 16 millimeter?
35
wow.
millimeter. I can't remember now if they were negative or positive.
Wow.
But they were, all right. But they were kinescopes. And so it got down to a day, I didn't know exactly when, because, it was very weird. I didn't know exactly when this thing was going to close. And as it got closer and closer and closer to the whatever, we didn't know. It was apparent they were not going to take these films out. Nothing was going to happen with them. And and my friends, no, it's either we do something or we don't. And if we don't, I already know we'll be feeling really guilty. We'll be crying over it. We'll regret it for the rest of our lives. So it was there's a vulgar expression that I won't say that my parents used to say, go or get off the pot.
Yes.
There's a clean version of it.
Yes.
And so on a one Saturday morning, near what we felt was the end, I got a crew together. I rented a storage room in another location, and we very quietly took the material out of that room and brought it to. And you gotta understand, it was smelled of high heaven, vinegar, horrifying.
And Jerry, this would be heavy as well, 35 millimeter.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm leaving out tons of detail. It was a big deal, but we did it because we had to do it.
Oh.
There's no money in it for me. In fact, I spent money to do this. We rented a space, and we brought it all over there, and it's there. And I since then have had my colleagues, my partners in this. Nobody's planning to make any money off of this. No, all we want to do is preserve it.
Yeah.
All we want to do is be able that you can see it, that anyone can see it. We've gone to major companies and archives, and we've had experts look at the material, and we are getting the material saved. We are scanning and saving these films.
Wow.
And
amazing. Thank you.
It's about I can't even tell you because there's literally 1,000 prints of these things, more maybe. And the thing is, it's I'm just glad it was a 15-minute show, actually. So thank goodness. But yeah,
that might be why it was saved. I have to say, first of all, this sounds like a great story. It's like the end of Indiana Jones. Like you actually,
it is.
And I've talked to one guy on the podcast here, David Boreanaz, who was a local kiddie host in Buffalo on WKBW. He hosted a show called Rocket Ship 7, and he was on for 16 years from the mid-'60s to the '70s, doing daily a kids show where he would show cartoons. Anyway, it's all lost. It was never kinescoped. It was never preserved. It was all taped over the next day. Yeah. So what you're talking about from the mid-'50s to have actually been kinescope in the first place, that's a miracle.
Right.
For you to have rescued and saved it just before it was destroyed is another one. So what a tremendous
and just to put a cap on it, we didn't know this. The next day, all the they were locks to get into this place.
Wow.
But people who were part of my consortium had the codes because they had their material in the thing, and we were able to do this. We found out that the next day they changed the codes.
Wow.
And that next week they completely closed the place. That's why they changed the codes, and it was demolished within a week.
Oh my goodness.
From when we did it. We literally did this the last second you could do it.
Wow.
That really meant that no one, and there was all kinds of, I still have the notices sitting on my desk over here that say basically at this point you have forfeited your material. Right. They basically, so I have no guilty conscience about it.
No.
I have told the Clampett family that I did this and that we will scan it, and everyone, you will have access to it, and we're gonna we'll probably put it on YouTube, and but it's in the works. It's a massive effort. Let me put it that way.
Incredible. Yeah. What a story. Thank you for doing that. That's tremendous. Yeah. We'll be right back, Doc, with author and animation historian Jerry Beck. Well, March marks 5 years of Paramount Plus, a premier destination for live sports, breaking news, and must-watch series and films. This month's lineup is led by The Madison, premiering March 14th. It's from Taylor Sheridan and stars Michelle Pfeiffer and Kurt Russell in a deeply personal family drama. March also brings the premiere of Marshals, a spin-off series that finds Casey Dutton leaving the Yellowstone Ranch behind as he joins an elite unit of U.S. Marshals. And Game TV and Paramount Plus Canada have teamed up to bring you Hate the Player, the Ben Johnson story. This 6-part mockumentary stars Shamir Anderson as controversial sprinter Ben Johnson. Look for it to start streaming on Paramount Plus March 27th, with 2 new episodes released weekly. Here he is again, Jerry Beck. I'm curious if you can address this. I've always read that, and this, I was born in 57, so but just, we're the same age.
Right.
But I never saw Time for Beanie. That was before my time.
No, right.
But I've read that the puppet, if people don't know, Beanie and Cecil was a seasick sea serpent and his buddy Beanie with a propeller on his head. There was an animated Bob Clampett show.
Right.
They, from what I understand, it started as puppet shows and it was animated to sort of look like puppets. But when it was a puppet show, what I've always read is that the the serpent character would talk to the audience and said something outrageous like, you don't want to miss the next show, so glue the knob to the set so it doesn't move. Is that a true story, or have you ever heard that one before?
I don't know that story, but I've heard stories like that, and I can believe it. I don't know, but I can believe it. I mean, you may know the famous story. I grew up with Soupy Sales.
Soupy Sales, yeah.
I grew up in New York. He was all over the place, but I know that he was in New York for a while. But he has the famous story about telling the kids to go into their parents' bedroom wallet, and go into that wallet in his pocket and pull out those little green things and send them to me, that kind of thing. And holy shit, he got in trouble for that.
I think he had to get off the air for a week or two, right?
Yeah.
He that's a great story, but I heard there was one like that with Beanie and Cecil. Just quickly, I actually got to meet Bob Clampett once. That Reg Hart we talked about brought him to Toronto in 1979, and a bunch of us gathered at the University of Toronto, and he showed Coal Black and a couple other cartoons, and passed around to us in the audience cells with backgrounds from Corny Concerto. Really? Like it was a show and tell. Yes. And we're all looking at these things. You could have at that point taken one of those and bought a house like the incredible works of art preserved. And he was that generous to allow that to happen while he spoke in front of us. I remember how sheepish he was about Coal Black, and we just could not believe how beautiful it was on that big screen, and the music and everything else.
Yeah, I mean, there was, I mean, I'm glad he was sheepish about it. He actually got awards from black, heritage groups for that film in particular, because he used, I think, almost the entire cast. Maybe Mel has one or two lines, but mainly it's a black cast, and black, and even the music. I believe is only a little bit of Carl Stalling in it. It's mostly scored by black musicians. It's back in the 70s. In the 70s, I was in my 20s, 80s. I worked for United Artists in New York. We distributed the old Warner Brothers cartoons, AAP. But we had them everywhere. We could even show them in movie theaters. And I did a program in New York of, I forgot the name of it exactly, but it was called something like Uncensored Cartoons.
Right.
And it was basically a collection of Bugs Bunny Nips the Nips and Goldilocks the Jivin' Bears and the Censored 11 cartoons mainly. And we ran them, and people laughed. What's the right term? At them, with them. It's just that the mindset in the 70s, as I recall it, and even into the early 80s, was we couldn't believe they would make a cartoon like that in terms of the racial aspect. But we were so far from it, and we were so more enlightened that we actually could laugh at it, in a different way. But we could laugh at it as in an incredulous, I can't believe they did that, kind of thing. That has changed, in by the 90s, the aughts, the attitudes, it's gone back to, oh, that's really offensive. We can't show that. Right. And of course we can't on television, on a kid's show. But as I preach, these cartoons were never aimed at kids in the first place. So it's the mistake is our thinking that these are for kids. There's a universality of the classic theatrical cartoons and even the early TV cartoons like Yogi Bear and the Flintstones. Mm-hmm. Anyone can watch those. They're funny for any age. Right. It's just the way we are in this country. It's not like that anywhere else, by the way, either. Animation is just another medium. Luckily, we're a little better at it today. We have adult animation like, Family Guy or South Park. We have things that are more visible as adult features in animation. Mm-hmm. But I'm a big proponent of just that animation isn't for kids. Doesn't mean you can't make it for kids. There are wonderful preschool shows and other animations, SpongeBob, Bluey. I get it. But the thing is, it's not just for kids. Like, maybe that's how I should say it. But
even when we were watching Looney Tunes on television when we were youngsters, there would be wartime cartoons where there would be rationing, or we got white wall tires, or we've got whatever. Yeah. And as a kid, I never, what are they talking about? But you still laughed because it was just fascinating. Like, it was
the way they did it. Yeah. There's so many references. A lot of the lines in Warner Brothers cartoons unknown to us. But now we've discovered are from radio shows, right? Well, I've been sick, or that sort of thing, are all things that were on the radio that were well known from Jack Benny or some of the other the shows that were popular at that time.
Monotonous, isn't it?
Exactly. So it's like, and audiences would have gotten that immediately and laughed. The music and the background, Carl Stalling is using popular tunes to reflect what's going on screen. But we as kids or whatever, we grew up not knowing that. Here's a good moment for me to mention my blog, cartoonresearch.com, cartoon research, because we published a lot of articles about that, about where these references come from. So we try to answer all these questions, the mysterious questions of cartoons past. Yeah, I mean, well, one thing I've been pointing out lately, look, this is the beauty of me teaching in my later life here, is I have to constantly think about all of this while I expound and espouse the history to my students,
Mm.
and I come up with new theories that I love, but they're not really theories; they're new things I'm learning. And this one I want to underline to everybody answers what you just said. These cartoons were never meant to be seen again. They were, I actually do this in my class. Sometimes I teach online. I hold up a comic section of the paper, which they still make. But the cartoons in movie theaters were like comic strips in the newspaper. You go in, you see it, you laugh, and you'll never see it again. I'm talking about the 20s, the 30s, and into the early 40s, maybe even to the late 40s or so. TV wasn't around. There was no television showings.
Right.
There was no thought of it. There was no anything we have today. There was no YouTube or cable channels or physical media. The only aftermarket might have been little 16 millimeter reels, as you know, 16 millimeter and 8 millimeter home movies.
Right.
And that was really the only aftermarket. And even then, they were condensed. They were black and white of color, this, that, and the other. The thinking was that they were of that moment. They were of that moment, and that's it. And that's why, that explains why there are ration card gags. That explains why there's topical humor in the 30s and 40s, much that we in the later years would not get. That the fact that they're so well made, they still work, even with those gags. And that's something people should know. They were not aimed at kids, and they were not meant to be seen beyond the month or two that they were playing in theaters. And it explains a lot. I won't go on and on, but I bring it up in my class, and it helps explain why there's a dozen Mickey Mouse clones in the early 30s. It's, there's reasons for all of this.
Well, even my dad lived to be almost 100 years old, and he would use expressions like holy mackerel or suffering catfish. And I didn't realize, what that's literally from Amos and Andy, I think, right?
Right.
It was, so even though they weren't meant to be repeated, they were pounded into you at a certain point, and you carried them, and people lived on, and they kept using those expressions. I want to ask about just Coal Black a bit. You have it in the 50 Greatest Cartoons. That was a book where you surveyed 1,000 animators, professionals, historians, and this was the consensus. Would you put it in the book today? Well,
I did a book about 12 years ago or so called The 100 Greatest Looney Tunes.
Great book.
And it's in there.
Yeah, good for you.
Would I do it today? By the way, Coal Black gets a nice couple of pages in the Bob Clampett book.
Wow. Wow. Look forward to that. Would
I put it in there today? Yes. Yes, with all the warnings, bells and whistles. It's history. Yeah. I don't do books for kids. I'm doing books for people our age or for anybody really. But even if a kid's reading one of my books, like the 50 Greatest Cartoons, he's a little hipper, and he's going to realize these are all from the old days. We have the dates when they came out. It's what I would have wanted to know. A lot of the projects I work on are for me at age 15. And when I started to look for things like this, the only reason I even got into this is because at the time in the 70s, there were no books. There were no. By 75 was the year that Tex Avery, King of Cartoons by Joe Adamson came out. That was also the year that Leslie Cabarga did The Fleischer's Story. And the only other book were The Art of Disney by Christopher Finch, a big giant coffee table book I have right behind me. Yep. And there was nothing else on anything else. And
you contributed to what? I'm sorry, Jerry, to cut you off. What were you saying?
No, I was going to say, just to dip into my story, maybe you were about to ask it, was that's when I got together with Leonard Maltin.
Yes.
Leonard and I, you know, again, it's a whole story, but you know, we worked on that book for a couple of years in the 70s.
We're talking about Of Mice and Magic, which was to me was the Bible. Like that was the book. You're right. There weren't a lot of books. And all of a sudden there was not only a book, but a list of every cartoon at every studio.
Yep.
You were researching and contributing to that. It's invaluable and certainly was for many, many years. So near and dear to my heart.
The minute that book came out, we basically went, we did it. That's it. We did. And like from that day on till now to today, I still find something new every day. Every day something comes up. And that's why I have the blog and I still continue to do it.
It's great.
Because, you know, we post new information that we find. We all the films I thought were lost, literally lost in 40 years ago, most of them have emerged. Thank Amazing. God. I mean, from from archives in Russia, or from all over the world, private collectors, whatever. We found everything I couldn't find way back when. But it's good. It's good. It's been a lifelong hunt.
Well, it's emerging for TCM viewers now. They announced earlier this year that the 700 or so Warner Brothers cartoons are going to be part of their films, and which is welcome. Although I have to say, it was nice to see they did show cartoons for many years, and they were generally the Popeyes, some early MGM cartoons, and those were films you never saw in a way. So it was kind of good to have a window on them at least there. But I think that bringing the Warner ones is just as we're talking. They're wonderful. They hold up. And Jerry, you must agree that these films are 70 or 80 years old.
Yeah,
that they hold up and have aged better than anything else from that era. Like it's almost, they seem more evergreen, right? And is it just because they were so well animated and scored, or is it also that because they were short, that they were almost designed for shorter attention spans? And is that why
everything you're saying is a factor in for that hypothesis that they are evergreen? And yes, the quality, the scores, that's really almost still the invisible secret ingredient on the classic cartoons, that there's individual scores for every short was treated like it's like a little feature, when they made them back then. I mean, the other factor, which I'll say that I had something to do with, which was that what we're showing today on TCM, on MeTV, on Tubi, on physical media, Warner Archive, Blu-rays, is restored. And if we can, we go right back to something that it hasn't been forever. The camera negative. We have the camera negatives. Some of the films don't, but we have the next best thing. We're making them the best that they can ever have looked, that they would have looked like, when they were released. And I think that's a factor. I'm still marveling when I look at some of the Looney Tunes and they're restored like that, and they look literally brand new, like they were made yesterday. You know what I mean?
Yes, it's stunning.
And, for years and years and years, when you and I were kids, they ran 16 millimeter prints that I now know were dupes of 35 millimeter prints. It's the weirdest thing, because that's what they gave them. And when I got into this, now it's been a long time. It's been at least since the beginning of this century that we've been putting them out on Laserdisc. And even then, when we put them out first on Laserdisc and VHS, they were from 35 millimeter prints, Technicolor prints. But the thing is, and that looked great. It was an upgrade from what we were used to.
But it's funny
But we've gone farther than that now. Now we're going back to the actual successive exposure Technicolor negatives, and they look brand new and they look fantastic. And that's part of why. That's part of why they, they still hold up.
It's amazing that is the case. The camera eggs. I know when I first started collecting cartoons, I was in my teens. I found I got the Big Reel, which was a magazine that told you where you could buy it.
That. Yep.
And I'm here in Toronto, and so I ordered. The first cartoon was Hamature Night, a Tex Avery cartoon. And looking at it today, it looks like it was shot through a silk stocking with a leg still in it. But we were so excited to get that and all of it in sound on a film and show it. That it's funny how nowadays, with as you say, the technical advances, the way they're able to restore films, you can really see these things for the first time. It's so exciting. Beck will be back after this brief message. It's time once again to check in with Emily Gagne. Emily, what's new this month on Hollywood Suite?
Well, you're in luck, Bill. It is our free preview month.
What? Say that again?
Yes, free. We are available for free with most Canadian TV providers this month.
That is a pretty good deal. You can't beat free. What can people look forward to seeing this month?
Well, if you're into some, fun classic films, we've got the Back to the Future trilogy, we've got the Shawshank Redemption, but we also have some great women-directed and women-written films like Silkwood, which is one of my favorite films, written by Nora Ephron, starring Meryl Streep and Cher.
Cher, yeah, no kidding. Well, it's Oscar month. Any Oscar-worthy films coming on Hollywood Suite?
Absolutely. We've got quite a few award season classics in our lineup, including Steven Soderbergh's Traffic, A Beautiful Mind, and even recent Best Picture winner, Parasite.
Okay, there it is on Hollywood Suite this month for free. Thank you once again, Emily.
Thanks, Bill.
Very, very quiet. We're back with Jerry Beck. Speaking, of course, with Jerry Beck, animation historian and just someone who is the king of cartoons. He's got so many great credits and books and authors. You got to grab some of these books we've been talking about. I can hardly wait to read the Clampett book. My God, what a scoop. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
But let's talk a bit more about TCM. I know in the last month or so, they opened with Bugs Bunny. They showed some classic Bugs, and a lot of it was from the 50s. It was more the Chuck Jones era, I guess, some of the famous ones for sure. And they did look brand new. You're right. They're so clean.
Yeah, in fact, you're right. I watched that too, and they looked really good. I think it had something to do with the cable connection or something. It's just, they're beautiful. They look fantastic.
Yeah.
Go on.
Well, what was noticeable too, we talked about how, we learned things as kids watching these cartoons, even though they were for adults. But I think it's great that a new generation, adults or whatever age, the lessons, I would go to trivia pub leagues at university and I could name operas because I'd seen What's Opera Doc or the Marx Brothers. Some of it sinks in, some of that music. I think it's great for a new generation to have some of the knowledge of some of the things beyond the fact they were funny as hell that, just you learn from watching them. And again, going back to Coal Black or other cartoons that are problematic, obviously for reasons, racism and different things. But TCM is famous for showing things uncut. And will there be a way to put them in context? Will you be maybe on camera joining Ben Mankiewicz to talk about some of these that might need more of an introduction?
Well, it's so new in the process. I am talking to TCM. I'm under the impression that may happen. I'm not sure who I'll be talking to, but I'm under the impression I'm going to be asked to be on camera. I already did shoot a little mini history of of the Warner cartoon, just orally, just explaining it and for them. And I don't know how they're going to use that material. But you might see me pop up in a break or an interstitial, or maybe they're making a special. I don't know. It's weird. I kind of know and I don't know. I know a few things. They are trying to figure out what to do. And one of my writers, a guy named Devin Baxter, I want to give this guy the credit in the world. He's a young guy. He's been reading my website for a long time, grew up with reading me, and is following in my footsteps. I shouldn't even say that. He's just doing his own thing. And he's been doing a lot of writing for my blog. And out of the blue, literally a few months before the TCM deal even happened, he was telling me about a project he was doing on his own, just because. Okay, let me preface this. I'll get to it in a moment.
Okay.
I get a lot of people writing to me about the history of animation with questions. And one of the main questions that people ask me all the time are, well, I just watched this cartoon, hair remover, whatever. And what movie was that attached? What movie was that cartoon attached to when it came out? Now, the last 30 years or so, there have been Roger Rabbit cartoons attached to Dick Tracy, or Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, or a new Pixar short attached to a Pixar film, or something like that. That's been the norm in the last 30 years or so. So the kids today, they think that's the way it was back then, and it wasn't like that. It was the shorts were sold to theaters totally independently of features. It would be a fluke, whatever it played with. I'm not going to go into the whole history of distribution, which I could do, and how that works. But my younger friend here decided to look into this a little further, and did, with the advent of the internet age and newspapers.com and archives, and you can find things, he researched all the Warner cartoons from 1930 to roughly, when I talked to him a few months ago, he does it on the side. It's a hobby. He's gotten up to the late 40s, and he researched what played with the features that opened in LA and New York.
Wow.
So he's got this mammoth list of done from the point of view of every cartoon, and he's got either newspaper reviews of the movies, which amazingly mention the cartoon playing with it, or there are newspaper advertisements which mention the cartoon playing with it, with the feature. So he's been able to pinpoint what cartoon played with what movie in its premiere engagement in New York or LA. And he told me this, and then the TCM thing happened, and they were like, we're trying to figure out what to do. And I brainstormed with them a few ideas that may or may not happen. And I said, by the way, I've got this friend who's compiled a list with the backup. He's got the ads or the reviews.
Yeah. And
I said to my friend, okay, I don't have your list. Don't give me your list. I don't want your list. I want it, believe me. I said, what cartoon played with Casablanca? And then I went the other way. I went, okay, and what movie played with a wild hare, the first Bugs Bunny, right? And he got back to me immediately with the reviews and an ad for each.
Wow.
And Casablanca played with it A Tale of Two Kitties, which is the first Tweety. It's the first Tweety cartoon.
Right.
And a Clampett, by the way, as you know.
Yes.
And wow. And Wild Hare played with, I want to forget the title. I want to say it's The Sea Hawk. It's an Errol Flynn picture.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, that's all I need to know. I went into my meeting. I said, I've got this guy. I go, if you guys were to hire me, which I think they would have done. I talked myself out of getting hired. You would want me to find out this sort of information. I've got a guy who's already done it. Done. It's there. You can start programming immediately. You can actually match the cartoon with the feature, because your unique situation, TCM, you actually have all the features.
Right.
You have all the features and you've got all the cartoons. You can put them together.
It'd be amazing. And then they should also have a newsreel and a short and
they should. Well, let's not get too far, but yes, I agree with you. So they haven't done this yet. They're going to start doing it, I think, in April or so. They're going to match the cartoon with what played with it originally.
That's a brilliant idea.
Scoop number 2 for you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'm appreciating all of this. It's funny. I've been, there's a historic theater from the 30s in Hamilton, Ontario, not far from here. And they've been showing movies that opened there in 1936, 37.
Oh, cool.
They showed A Night at the Opera, and they asked me if I had any shorts because I been doing a little series where I'd bring literally a 60 millimeter projector and throwing a cartoon on their screen before something. And we managed to line up a few that were in the same year, but not the same day. Like you're doing and researching. I think that's tremendous.
I mean, it's not an act, I'll just leave it with, it may have played, a film may have played with Casablanca in LA, but it played with a different cartoon in New York and everywhere else, but we're qualifying it.
But Warner's would make cartoons like a Be Call to Arms that would echo a feature that they had recently made.
They're going to, TCM, I believe, is going to do, and I don't have their schedule in front of me. I don't know what's going on. I'm under the impression that in March and beginning of April, they're first going to put appropriate cartoons like But Call to Arms with To Have and Have Not. You know what I mean? They're gonna match up things that make a lot of sense in another way. So I think they're gonna do that first, and then they're gonna do the accurate way.
Amazing. Something to look forward to. Jerry, do you know? I'm curious about this too. You talked about the Time for Beanie and how you rescued them, and did Warner's? Why are these films? Why do you still have camera negatives? They must have been curated to a certain extent at either Warner's or Schlesinger, wherever he kept his.
I've thought about that a lot. There are a few reasons that make sense that I understand, because if they were so ephemeral, they could have just thrown it all away. As you know, in the late 20s, early 30s, many, maybe all studios essentially got rid of their silent movies because they needed a storage space, and those were worthless. There was no future value to a silent Tom Mix movie. That was the thinking then. They weren't thinking about anything. Luckily, some studios like MGM didn't do that, but even then, many of them have holes of lost films. The reason is this. It comes down to follow the money. The reason is when you have a company and you have the films are your assets, and so if for the future, if you're going to do anything with if you didn't have the films, you don't have anything. If you're like right now, Warner Brothers is being bought by Paramount.
Yep.
Paramount is buying their film library as part of it all. They're getting all the Looney Tunes. If they got rid of the Looney Tunes, they wouldn't have anything to give. You'd have the characters, I guess, and you can make new ones, but you wouldn't have the originals. I mean, again, some places didn't think like that, and some places did. I point to King Features Syndicate, right? That's the company that syndicates and owns the comic strip characters like Popeye and Blondie and Flash Gordon and many of those. And a lot of the only stuff that, how do I put this? Amazingly, the Popeye cartoons were popular enough that everybody kept them. The Blondie features were popular enough that they kept them. King Features was notorious for licensing out their characters. They make a film at that time, and then it's in the contract. They don't have the rights to it anymore after several years, and they have to burn the negatives and everything. They just licensed it for the moment.
Right.
So that's why in my universe, there was a series of Barney Google cartoons that Columbia made that were for years non-existent, but we have now located black and white prints, a really bad color print at the Library of Congress. But they exist, but no thanks to King Features. and King Features made serials, movie serials with Mandrake the Magician,
right,
and Terry and the Pirates, and many, many others. And for years, those were considered lost. They've been found finally, but again, if they weren't like deposited at the Library of Congress, if they weren't this or that, they wouldn't exist. The ones that exist fine are the popular things like Flash Gordon, Popeye. They realized no, that's still got a value. So they didn't order Paramount to destroy them.
Yeah.
So that's the reason is it comes down to. That's the assets of the company are the films,
right,
and the ways to make the films. Again, I'm amazed they were that forward thinking. But the thing is, that's really kind of the reason. I always wondered, I'm a big fan of the old kooky Terry tunes that have, Mighty Mouse, and all that.
Yeah.
And then the ones from the 30s with Farmer Alfalfa. They did black and white cartoons almost longer than anybody else, from 1930 to 1942 or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're really not. I mean, now we have a use for them, but for decades there was no further use for black and white cartoons. Why did the studio even save them? They did.
Thank goodness.
But it was they were aware that's the company. If I ever sell it, which he eventually did, that's what you're getting. You're getting these films.
Even little studios like Columbia were made a lot of cartoons, Scrappy or all these kinds of things, right? It's thank goodness. Just while we're talking about funnies, a little story. When I first started, I wrote for TV Guide Canada, and I started in '83. And my very first interview was with Hal Roach Sr.
Oh yeah,
and I was writing about colorization, which was popular back then, very crude and horrible, but it was happening. And I interviewed him and got him on the phone, and I said, "Mr. Roach, do you think the color makes a difference to your Laurel and Hardy films? Will they make them more popular?" And he said, "Well, let me ask you a question. Do you read the funnies?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, do you read them during the week in black and white and then on the weekend in color?" Okay, yes. "Well, do you only laugh on the weekend?" I just thought that was the smartest thing I ever heard. It was coming from Hal Roach. It never left.
Right. That's great.
I want to ask a question. But you've been very generous with your time. A couple of quick ones here. You're a film collector. What was the first cartoon you ever bought, and where did you buy it?
That's a great question. And the answer is so esoteric. Let's think right now. I lived in New York City.
Right.
And there was a store. Well, there were two stores back and this is the 70s. And the famous one that I think people have heard of outside of New York is Willoughby Peerless, a camera store. I don't know if you ever heard of that.
No.
It was on 32nd Street. Huge, almost a department store of camera equipment. Beautiful. And they had 16 millimeter films for sale for $5, things like that. I bought some cartoons, but the real first one was there was an actual store, and I'm forgetting the name of it. I've asked my friends about it, and they reminded me, but I've forgotten it again. It was called something like, it wasn't called the National Screen Service, but it had a name like that, because we know what the National Screen Service is. That was the depository of posters and lobby cards.
Was it National Cinema Service on 57th Street?
Yes. Is that it? You know it.
That's where I bought that's where I ordered my first
Me
film.
too. Well,
okay.
They had a store. They had a storefront on 57th Street, and it was locked. The only way you can get in, you had to knock on it or make an appointment. But it was a store, and I knocked. They let me in. I said, "You're selling film?" And they had like bookshelves I behind it with those white boxes with film.
Yeah.
And I said, "Do you have a list, or what do you have?" And I said, "I'm really looking for cartoons." So they pointed me right out in the open. There was a whole shelf of cartoons. I still remember I bought a print, two things. I think I still have them. Both of them were black and white of color. One was, and I'm sure that one of them, the first one I'll mention, was a Castle film probably, but I didn't know it then. Mm-hmm. It was Sliphorn King of Polaroo. That's a Walter Lantz Swing Symphony.
Wow.
And I didn't even know what it was, but I was intrigued by it. And I think I still have that print. And the other one was a black and white of Buckaroo Bugs, the Clampett cartoon with Red Hot Rider. Wow. And I got home. I also got a print whether it was there or not, I don't know. It was one of the first prints I ever had was Rabbit's Kin with the Pete Puma.
Wow.
And in Technicolor print. I might still have it. And that was like the first cartoons I had, and the first films I really had. The very first film, I'll go even more esoteric on you. The very first film, period, preceding me even having a projector, was that I was a young man. I was 13, 14, 15 when comic book conventions started in New York.
Wow.
And somewhere along the line, in fact, I still have to be in high school. I was definitely still in high school, probably 73, 72. People were selling back then not only the bootleg of the Superman cartoons. I couldn't afford that. I always remembered it was $59.
Oh, ouch.
That was a lot of money back then.
Yeah.
But I could buy these little rolls that were trailers, and I swear I know I still have both of them. They're both beat red now because I have a big trailer reel that I put these on. But one was for Yog, Monster from Space, and the other one was more important. It was the theatrical trailer, 3 minutes from A Boy Named Charlie Brown.
Oh my goodness!
And I brought that to my school. I was still trying to figure it out. How could sound be on this? I couldn't figure it out. And I brought it into school. I went to the AV club. I said, could you run this for me? And it wasn't even on a reel. They had to put it on a core and the whole thing. And they ran it. And my mind was blown. It was just the trailer for The Boy Named Charlie Brown, but it was mine.
Yes.
And that the sound was on there and that I didn't understand how that was. And I was like, I love this. I was hooked on collecting 16 from that moment. And I used my bar mitzvah money. I had money from a tradition of my family, and I bought a very expensive at Willoughby Peerless. I bought a brand new Bell and Howell projector.
Wow,
which I learned later the collectors hated. It was film. It was the automatic thread, but you know what? I was a kid. I didn't know what I was doing, and the auto thread seemed so cool, and the projector worked like a dream. And that's it. From there, I bought Three Stooges and whatever else. And you're right. I found the Film Collectors Registry, which preceded the big reel. And then I even wrote a lot of articles for Film Collectors World.
Wow.
Or Movie Collectors World, whatever they were called. Actually, somebody gave me a whole bunch of old issues recently. That I worked for that company for a while. The 70s, it was the only way you could see these things.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a print of a partial print of A Boy Named Charlie Brown. I've got the first reel and the last reel. I'm missing the middle. If you know anybody who has the middle reel, and I think the first reel is IB Tech and the second one is not.
Wow. I'd love to see that in IB Tech. I saw that movie. I'm not the biggest fan of it, but I saw it when it came out at Radio City Music Hall.
Oh,
and that was interesting because even I, at whatever age that was, 15, I thought, this is a TV cartoon. I mean, in retrospect, it's a little bit better than one of the specials, but it still looked like a TV cartoon. And on that giant screen, to me, it was like, it just is not right.
It didn't help. Right. No, it showed every flaw. You're right. Even on my
screen needs to be a Disney film, Mary Poppins, whatever, but not this,
Let me just quickly ask you, you mentioned a couple of Canadian National Film Board films in the 50 Greatest Cartoons. And they had a very unique run there with some really talented people. Do you have a favorite among those?
Oh, well, I just recently met I'm not going to remember her name right now, the woman who runs the National Film Board of Canada and the animation division. And she was in town for an event. And I love what they do, period. I mean, they are great. And they said, I don't know if it's a secret, they said they're doing an animated feature, which I don't think they've done before.
Wow.
And, well, I tend to run toward the funny, and the big snit, the cat came back. The ones that are in the 50 Greatest Cartoons are, I mean, I not that I haven't seen anything since, but those are really good, I mean,
they're fun.
I guess the big snit and and the cat came back. Those are classics.
There was a couple. There was a guy, Derek Lamb. He made Hold Up in the Old West, and with as Santa Claus gets held up by robbers, and the Cartoon Man, which is a weird little cartoon, which is very funny. I always thought so.
Right, they were definitely doing. I mean, I love that period. I love the '60s for all animation, because that's an interesting transition from the old days of Hollywood to the new era of whatever, of foreign films, independent films. It was a weird. So if you just look at I do a class where I just show the Oscar winners of the 1960s, because it's the only decade where you go from the Pink Panther and the Critic, to Winnie the Pooh. You know what I mean? But it's such a weird collection of film. It's back and forth. It's even the Dot and the Line, Monroe, Ersatz from Zagreb. So many. It's just a smorgasbord of what animation can be, or what it is.
Some of those Patty Freeling Pink Panthers, really funny. Like they really.
No, that's the line that a lot of us say. You almost said it exactly, which is those Pink Panthers from Patty Freeling. Some of them are really good. That's what I usually hear. The problem is they overdid it. That series. I worked for United Artists, my first job in the industry, from 1978 through 84, and they were still distributing brand new Pink Panther cartoons till 81.
Wow.
People don't even know that. And the thing is, yes, the first 2 years, if it's in the 60s, the Patty Freeling cartoons are pretty good. They were still doing it. They weren't churning them out. They were trying to make them really, really good. They won an Oscar. They figured they had to live up to that. And they got nominated a few more times. The Freeling at that studio with the Pink Panther cartoons and the Inspector and some others actually were pioneering a different look for cartoons. But it got ignored because the prevalent thing of the 60s was probably Hanna-Barbera.
Right.
And that was like the look of the 60s. Disney was fading out. There were other things going on. I love Yellow Submarine, but it didn't influence, or it didn't go anywhere beyond it being a one-off, of the kind of thing it was.
Yeah.
But the 60s are very, very, obviously I grew up in that period, so I'm slightly nostalgic for it as well.
Me too. Yeah. And just if you watch, the Grinch or some of the Jones work in the 60s, the feature work or the television, as well as the Patty Freeling, the difference to me is the timing. Like these guys could render characters that could act in a way, and the timing in a visual way that you would not find with Hanna-Barbera or anywhere else, right?
No, Hanna-Barbera, they all got down to what I call routines. I haven't really come up with a name for what they did then, because I had an interesting experience that fits into this, and yet it's not this. It's more about some of the weaker theatricals. What I mean by that is this. Here's what I'm trying to say. I like everything. I'll tell you, let's get the one I don't like out of the way, and then I like everything else. A lot of people know that I'm famous for, I'm not a big fan of the 60s Paul Smith directed Woody Woodpecker and Lance cartoons. To me, those are like the weakest theatrical cartoons ever.
I gotcha. Yep.
And then, okay. But by the way, if you happen to get one by Sid Marcus or Jack Hanna, they're not bad. They're not bad. They're okay.
And part of the problem, Jerry, is you've got William Lava. Is that the music?
Oh, that's at Warner Brothers.
Okay, but the music wasn't as good either.
Oh,
right? Yeah. That's the problem.
No, but the thing is, I have a nostalgia and a like for the Paramount famous studio cartoons, and they're written off by a lot of people. But I'm a big advocate for those for a variety of reasons. People aren't really looking at them; they just feel, oh, that was the former Fleischer studio, or all those Popeyes are the same. I hear you. I get it. At one time in my crazy life, at one time I worked for Paramount, one time I worked for Harvey Entertainment.
Wow.
I've been everywhere. I've done everything. At one point I still have them. I came into some photostats of storyboards for famous studio cartoons, for Paramount cartoons, for Harvey Toons. And they were from some of the earlier ones, and the earlier being 1950. And I sat down with them, and I looked at these boards, these stats. The whole board is there. And I'm looking at them with my mind, and I'm going through them, and they're pretty good. I guess in my head, I'm editing them and or timing them so that they really work. It gets the bomb, explodes, next panel, this, that, whatever. And I'm looking at the whole thing, and I said, you know what? Let me compare this to the cartoon, see if there's any gags here that they cut out or what. Let me just compare it to the cartoon. It might be fun. So I sat down, put the cartoon on, held the board in front of me, and I learned something. I learned something immediately. I learned about timing. You used that word.
Yeah.
And it's what they didn't do, or they just had some POV over there at Famous that nobody else did, which was they timed everything the same. Okay, what do I mean by that? The thing is, when I read the boards, I was seeing what a funny cartoon this could be. But then I see the film, and I see that it's timed in a certain way that the gag doesn't pay off, or it doesn't work. Huh. And it's like, it's weird. It's so, and then I'm noticing that the timing is all of a certain way. It's all very this and then this and then this. Whereas the boards, you could see, okay, this has got to be faster here. This has got to be slower here. I'm not a director, but I could tell from my own study of classic Looney Tunes and others that these guys weren't doing that. They had it on the boards. And I've even talked to the voice people. I've gotten a chance to meet them way back when, and others, artists, and everything about those cartoons is pretty good. The artwork could in many cartoons be great. The animation itself is great. The voices these guys are giving their all. Now I know the boards are great. The problem is in the direction, and so I'm just bringing that up because there's a lot of good things to see in these films, even if the film itself isn't great, No,
it's a great point. Like there's been a couple of Harvey Tunes I've always, Ghost of the Town, where Ed Sullivan's in it or something.
Oh, yeah.
I've always, if I could buy that on 16, I'd buy it in a heartbeat. It's just so nostalgic and fun.
Well, that one's got, that's the whole audience singing his theme song, the Casper the Friendly Ghost theme song. Well, anyway.
We could go on and on. You've been very generous with your time, Jerry, and I'm going to thank you very much again. It's been fascinating. I've definitely enjoyed all about this, and it's a pleasure to get reacquainted after reading your books and your articles and your tremendous website. Just mention again, if people want to learn more, cartoonresearch.com. That's it, where they can find you, and everything else that you're doing. Congratulations, especially with I hope Turner Classic Movies. Hope to see you on there soon, putting a lot of this in context.
And for the people in the States, MeTV Tunes broadcast channel, look for it. Look them up online. 24 hours of classic cartoons.
Yeah, there are some ways to watch that from here, but it's not as obvious as there. So it's one of the things that isn't. It's one of those things.
You get TCM? Do you get TCM where you are?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
No, it's a favored destination for me for all kinds of reasons, but more so now with Bugs Bunny and all the Looney Tunes there. So thank you very, very much, Jerry. I know you're very busy. Right, I appreciate you taking the time for this. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
My thanks again to Jerry Beck, and if you are at all into animation, go to his amazing website, cartoonresearch.com. It's packed with everything you ever wanted to know about cartoons. Studio Tunes, International, you name it, it's a great site. Thanks as always to Phil Hong for animating these podcasts. Kudos as always to BJ Del Conte, Paul Boudra, and Stephen Dudley for the music heard here. And finally, thanks to you, listener. If you like what you heard, Please spread the word. I'm Bill Brio. Thanks for listening.